Welcome to the Left Library, the home of simple political theory. Today's question, what is fascism? Well, many people see fascism as something tied to the past or confined to far-right leaders like Mussolini, Hitler, or even modern figures like Donald Trump. The truth is deeper and far more unsettling. From a Marxist perspective, fascism isn't just about authoritarianism or nationalism. It's a structural response to the crises of capitalism, and its roots run through the very foundations of the global system that we live in today. To understand fascism, we need to ground it in the crises of capitalism. Fascism arises when the capitalist system faces existential threats, like economic collapse, mass unemployment, or growing revolutionary movements. In moments like these, the ruling class sees liberal democracy as inadequate to manage unrest and maintain their power. Fascism at this point becomes their last resort, a more brutal authoritarian mode of capitalist governance. Clara Zetkin called fascism the bourgeoisie's weapon against the proletariat. It's a way to suppress workers' resistance through force and fear while securing capitalist profits. Unlike liberal democracy, which relies on compromise, fascism replaces negotiation with repression. This shift isn't accidental. It's a calculated response to ensure that the wealth and power stay concentrated at the top. Fascism intensifies the exploitation of workers and consolidates economic power under the guise of national unity. As Marxist theorist Georgy Dimitrov puts it, fascism is, open quote, the open, terroristic dictatorship of the most reactionary, chauvinistic, and imperialist elements of finance capital, end quote. In other words, it's capitalism at its most violent and destructive. Fascism doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's built on the specific support of social classes. The ruling capitalist class funds and empowers fascist movements when their wealth is threatened. This happened in Nazi Germany, where industrialists like Krupp, Volkswagen, and IG Farben backed Hitler to crush unions and prevent socialism. But fascism also relies on the petty bourgeoisie. These are the small business owners, the professionals, and the middle classes. These groups feel squeezed during economic crises, caught between the wealth of the capitalist elite and the growing demands of the working class. Fascist movements exploit these fears of losing status and direct their anger away from capitalism and towards scapegoats like immigrants, minorities, or leftists. Fascism can even pull in parts of the working class, particularly those frustrated by economic insecurity. By framing itself as a populist movement that stands up for the people, fascism obscures the real source of workers' suffering, which is capitalist exploitation. It creates false unity through nationalism, dividing workers along racial or cultural lines instead of uniting them against the capitalist system. Fascism radically transforms the state, making it a direct tool of capitalist domination. Under fascism, the state abandons even the pretense of neutrality, fully aligning itself with corporate interests and violently suppressing any opposition. This is most clearly seen in corporatism, or as corporatism, where the state and big business merge into a single system of economic control. However, fascism's corporatism isn't just about economic equality or fairness. It's about subjugating workers. Private property and capitalist markets remain intact, but they're subordinated to nationalist and militarist goals. In fascist regimes, workers lose the right to organize or strike. Wages are kept perpetually low, and productivity is directed towards building military power. This structure highlights the contradictions of fascism. While it pretends to stand against elites, it ultimately serves the interests of the wealthiest capitalists. Fascism doesn't resolve capitalism's crises, it deepens exploitation and accelerates resource extraction, often leading to war. Fascism is more than a set of policies. It's an ideological project. While different fascist movements may look distinct, they share certain core features. Firstly, there's ultranationalism and racism. Here, fascism glorifies the nation or the race above all else, often defining the people in narrow exclusionary terms. This, again, creates a false unity that pits workers of one nation or race against others, undermining international solidarity. Secondly, there's the glorification of violence and militarism. Here, fascism celebrates war and violence as the tools for achieving its goals. Paramilitary groups and state violence are also central to its power, used to crush dissidents and enforce conformity. Thirdly, there's anti-communism. Fascism defines itself in opposition to socialism and communism. Its first targets are always trade unions, workers' parties, and revolutionary movements, which are seen as threats to capitalist power. 4. Corporatism and economic control. Fascist regimes tightly control the economy, directing production towards national and military goals while preserving capitalist property relations. And 5. Myth and propaganda. That fascism relies on myths of national rebirth, glorifying a supposedly great past that is being now corrupted by outsiders. Propaganda replaces rational discourse with emotional appeals to fear, pride, and hatred. Umberto Eco in Ur-Fascism identified these and other recurring elements, showing how fascism adapts to different contexts while maintaining its core structure. Many believe that fascism only exists in the form of far-right regimes like Mussolini's Italy or Hitler's Germany. But if we understand fascism as capitalism's violent response to crisis, it becomes clear that the global system we live in today, under neoliberal capitalism, is already fascistic. The exploitation of the global south through unequal exchange and imperialist extraction is a form of globalized fascism. Wealth is drained from the periphery to enrich the core, creating vast inequalities in wealth that are enforced through economic coercion, military intervention, and harsh political repression. Today's system dehumanizes billions of people, treating them as disposable labor for the benefit of the global capitalist elite. The climate crisis is another example. The destruction of the planet is driven by the same logic of capital accumulation that underpins fascism. Profit at any cost. When governments fail to act on climate change, they enforce a system where millions will die from floods, heat waves, and famine, all to maintain the wealth of a few. Even within the core countries of capitalism, neoliberalism has created conditions ripe for fascism. Austerity policies, stagnant wages, and growing inequality have left millions disillusioned. Far-right leaders exploit this anger every day, using the same tactics as classical fascists, scapegoating minorities, glorifying the nation, and attacking workers' movements. As Marxist scholar Samir Amin argued, the global capitalist system has always relied on forms of fascism to maintain its power. The colonial empires of the 19th and 20th centuries, the coups orchestrated by Western powers in the global south, and the militarized borders of today all show that fascism isn't an anomaly, it's a structural feature of capitalism. Fighting fascism means more than opposing individual leaders or parties. It requires dismantling the system that creates it. Fascism thrives on inequality, insecurity, and division, so defeating it requires building a world based on solidarity, equality, and democracy. Leon Trotsky emphasized the importance of the United Front, where all workers' organizations join forces to resist fascism, regardless of their differences. This unity is essential because fascism's strength lies in dividing people by race, nationality, or ideology. At the same time, we must address the systemic crises of capitalism. This means fighting for economic justice, guaranteeing universal rights, and building democratic institutions that serve the many, not the few. Only by transforming the material conditions that give rise to fascism can we prevent its resurgence. So, what is fascism? To summarize, it's capitalism's violent reactionary response to crisis, a tool used to suppress workers, protect the ruling class, and maintain the capitalist system at any cost. While it may take different forms through history, its essence remains the same. It's a combination of economic exploitation, political repression, and ideological manipulation. Today, the logic of fascism permeates the global system, from the exploitation of the global south to the militarized borders of wealthy nations. Understanding fascism through Marxist theory isn't just about learning history, it's about reorganizing and recognizing how these forces operate in our world today. For further reading on the topic, I'd turn to Antonio Gramsci selections from the prison notebooks, Umberto Eco, Ur-Fascism, Samir Amin, Unequal Development, Clara Zetkin, Fighting Fascism, and Leon Trotsky, Fascism, What It Is and How to Fight It. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Left Library for more. And let us know in the comments, what do you see as the most fascistic elements and aspects of our world today? Until next time, in solidarity.